Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. My name is
I'm
Hitzir,
Hardy.
and this week we are here to talk about one of the greatest, I'm not kidding, films of all time,
Mm-hmm.
Paddington 2, as well as Paddington in general as a franchise,
Mm-hmm.
where it came from as children's books, all the way to
Cartoons.
it cartoons, all the way to its recent adaptations as two critically acclaimed, award-winning films. In fact, if you've been following film Twitter discourse over the past couple of years, you might have been a little confused if you have not seen the Paddington movies. As you know, a lot of big critics, a lot of big
Mm-hmm.
websites like Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes, seem to be positioning Paddington 2 as, if not the greatest film of the 21st century, but the greatest film of all time, at least according to aggregated
Yeah,
reviews.
but yeah, that's true.
Um, a lot of people were shocked by this, particularly people who have not seen Paddington 2, which is, I guess, the majority of adults in the world. But as fans of Paddington, the franchise, Paddington 1 and Paddington 2,
Mm-hmm.
are you at all surprised by the widespread praise and the critical acclaim and the general, celebration of Paddington 2 amongst like serious film critics? Like, what is your opinion about this? Do you think it's better than Citizen Kane, for example? Like, does it deserve to top Citizen Kane on all these websites?
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of feeling when you watch a movie, right?
Mm.
Paddington 2 hits that. It was very timely because it was very
Mm.
sweet. It was very nice, very positive, and it was something that felt like you kind of needed during that time.
The beginning of the Trump era, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
2017, you know?
Yep.
Um, but when you look at like Citizen Kane, for example,
Mm.
that was about revolutionary cinema, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
new methods of filming, um, the weird putting of a story together, right? It
Mm.
was more of experiment, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But I guess in its own way, Citizen Kane was timely because of its subject matter.
correct.
The newspaper industry,
The
the
control of
person that it,
information and all.
correct, correct. The William Randolph Hearst and this composite character of, and that and Joseph Pulitzer and all the tycoons of the time, right?
Agreed.
I suppose we weren't around during 1941, lah. So
Exactly.
perhaps that is why it lacks that emotional or visceral or like timely connection for us. Although I respect films like Citizen Kane or The Godfather and
Same.
things like that. But when Paddington 2 came out, it kind of struck a chord with me. I had never seen anything quite like that.
Same.
Visually, it reminded me a bit of Wes Anderson, if Wes Anderson could tell an emotional story. Um,
So
that's what Paddington 2 was. But let's go back to the history of Paddington in general. Paddington as a franchise, the kindly bear that we've all come to know and love. It was the creation of a children's book
yes.
author by the name of Michael Bond,
Mhm.
who wrote a series of very sweet small scale books about the titular bear, so named because he was found at
Paddington
Paddington
Station.
Station in London after spending his early years in quote unquote darkest Peru. Bond originally wanted Paddington to have arrived from somewhere in Africa until it was pointed out to him that
There are no
bears
bears.
don't live in Africa. Yeah. Subsequently, Paddington Bear was adopted by the Brown family, Henry, Mary, Judy, and Jonathan, and Paddington explores London and gets to know this very busy new world he's landed in, especially his new neighbors or neighborhood of Windsor Gardens. His blue jacket and red hat and everything, it completes his iconic
Mhm.
appearance, and everyone in London seems to be just fine with the idea of a talking bear who loves marmalade.
Mhm.
Paddington, in essence, right, is a very well-behaved 7-year-old child. Like, he's a bear, but he behaves like a kid. He is polite to all, looks for the good in other people,
Mhm.
and takes in the world with great curiosity. He also has a tendency to get in over his head and make huge messes, which are mostly forgiven because he's such a thoughtful and kind bear.
Mhm.
He's a classic children's book character, gentle but rambunctious.
Yeah.
And Michael Bond produced numerous Paddington titles between 1958 with the first book, A Bear Called Paddington,
Hmm.
all the way up to his death in 2017, with his final Paddington book being published posthumously in the summer of 2018,
Hmm.
commemorating the 60th anniversary of the first books. And those books have ranged from collections of one-off Paddington stories he published in other publications to children's picture books. But the core Paddington titles are the 15-chapter books that about the bear that was published between 1958 and
Yeah.
2018. And these all contain several smaller adventures, each taking up its own chapter. Throughout the time of its release, from 1958 to today, have you had any encounters or personal relationships with the books? Because I personally never
Ah,
read the books
okay.
or watched the cartoons up until the Paddington films, but
Okay.
I think you have a better knowledge of its source material than I do, right?
Yes, and that's because of my
Yeah.
mom. So
Okay.
my mom's a kindergarten teacher, and so,
Oh.
but even before she was a kindergarten teacher, she already loved Paddington.
Mm.
So she bought all the books and all that, and that was where I was introduced to the books when I was like really young.
Mm.
Um, and that continued, all the way through my early childhood, lah. Till I
Mm-hmm.
was like maybe 8 or 9 when I stopped reading it.
Yep.
Yeah, because I guess I outgrew the books in a way.
Of course. Yeah.
However, there was um there's something about the lessons of Paddington that kind of helped me shape my childhood in that sense also lah.
Mm.
Which
How so?
not like to be polite, to how to talk to adults, um, how to
Mm.
express
Yep.
yourself without being a nuisance lah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but all this is in retrospect. Like it didn't occur to me that that was the kind of impact Paddington had until like years later. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so yeah. So because of my mom's love of Paddington, introduced it to me. Then I also love Paddington lah. Until we named our
Yep.
cat Paddington.
Oh yes, I forgot that your cat is named Paddy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, this is literally the perfect behold
yeah,
topic for you, like. Not only did we watch Paddington 2 together
together. Yeah,
in cinemas, but your cat was actually named after Paddington.
exactly. So
Boy, so your cat was already around, right, at the time when we watched Paddington?
yes, yes, yes. My cat's 17 years old.
Oh boy, man, how did I not pick this up when I
Oh, it's
invited you to
okay.
watch Paddington? Yeah. So yeah, you had like a long running relationship with the books. You
Yeah,
read
very
it as a
long.
kid and all of that. Did you ever see the television adaptations,
I saw the cartoon.
the cartoon?
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
Um. Okay. Again, this was when I was very young, so it
Mm-hmm.
was it was quite entertaining for that age group lah. When I
Yep.
was around 5 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
Um. I think now you can find it on YouTube actually. All these classic cartoons.
Correct. Yeah.
Like he's just going on these misadventures. I remember
Mm-hmm.
one where there was like some spy thriller episode.
Oh
Of
wow.
like exchanges of like suitcases. He carries his suitcase, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like how like KGB agents and MI6 agents will like exchange suitcases and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so there
Yeah.
was like this kind of mix up where one of the bad guys like got Paddington's suitcase, while Paddington had like the spy suitcase, and
Oh wow. It's
chaos
a bit like
ensues.
a North by Northwest or like Spy Family or something like that.
Exactly.
It's cute.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So that was my experience with it, lah. Um,
Mm.
so when I came into the movie, I had a certain expectation. I mean, when I came here, I had a certain expectation of what Paddington is and
Yep.
how he should be, lah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the Paddington TV shows. Like I mentioned, I've never seen the
Mhm.
TV shows. I've never read the books. But I mean, quite notably, from what I've read about it, Paddington has been adapted several
Yep.
times for television. I think one of the most celebrated ones was the 1975 BBC series, being a particular standout
Mm.
because it was a blend of stop motion puppetry with Paddington as a stop motion puppet with two-dimensional traditional illustrated backgrounds. And from what I've seen on YouTube, it looked like nothing else on children's television at the time or today, because it underlined why Londoners seem so unfazed by Paddington's presence.
Mhm.
Paddington being the 3D puppet, right, was more real than the 2D people in
Mm-hmm.
the world, and that certainly must have seemed true to his youngest fans. Paddington seemed more real than the real people. But despite Paddington's TV success, as I mentioned, it took up until 2014 for the bear to get a big screen movie adaptation. I would have assumed that back in the 60s or 70s, you have gotten a movie already, but no. The current film franchise that we're talking about was the first time was ever adapted for the big screen, and everything about it in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
seemed to be a massive warning sign. Colin Firth, who had originally been contracted as the voice of Paddington, dropped out of the project
Yep.
mere months before it was supposed to be released, and he was replaced by Ben Whishaw, whose younger sounding voice proved to be a better fit for the
Mm-hmm.
character. The trailers that were released played up the movie's broadest, wackiest moments. It seemed like yet another cheap kids movie,
Yes.
like Minions or whatever, a computer animated characters with very real actors interacting unconvincingly with a lot of kind of like a very broad slapstick gags and about bodily functions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
As it turns out, there was a major boo boo by the marketing department because that was not what the movie
Nope.
was. Paddington 1 ended up being a stealthy success thanks to the winsome writing and direction from director Paul King. As I said, Paul King, Verbato as Anderson. And a cast filled with heavy hitters, including everyone from Sally Hawkins to Hugh Bonneville to the villain Nicole Kidman to even
Oh.
Peter Capaldi. The movie was greeted with great reviews and $250 million at the worldwide box office. Did you catch Paddington 1 when it came out before you watched Paddington 2?
This is weird. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It kind of. I guess also the marketing wasn't as strong when it came out.
Marketing was terrible. It totally misframed the movie.
Exactly. So it didn't even occur to me that there was a Paddington movie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I watched it in retrospect after we watched Paddington 2 lah.
Well, now that you've seen it, right? What do you think of Paddington 1?
Actually, it really holds up. Like
It, it's really great. Right? I think it's almost equal in quality to
same.
Paddington 2. Almost. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I feel the Paddington 2 adventure was slightly bigger,
Sure, yeah.
but the heart in Paddington 1 was something that they captured really well. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, 2 also did it lah, but I'm just saying that for a first movie, that was something that was important lah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It would have been hard to predict when Paddington 1 came out
Yep.
that a sequel would be natural at that point,
Correct.
Although there was a bit of a snafu with the sequel as well. It had to switch distributors in the US because of, if you notice in the credits, Paddington 1 was distributed by the Weinstein
Yep.
Company. And if you know when Paddington 2 was released, you know
What
what
happened?
happened to Harvey Weinstein then.
Yeah.
So it switched to Warner Brothers.
Ronan Farrow happened.
Ronan Farrow happened, so it had to switch to the WB, the Warner Brothers, And I think besides the Batman and Harry Potter franchise, Paddington was the kind of biggest moneymaker for Warner Brothers at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And definitely more than Batman and all of the Snyder Cut or whatever. It was the best critically reviewed thing that WB has released in some time.
Yeah.
But it would have been hard to predict that Paddington 2 would match, or in the eyes of some critics, this one included, exceed its predecessor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Here's a broad general question for you.
Sure.
Um, I actually think, in my opinion,
Mm.
that Paddington 2 is the greatest film of the 21st century, like
Mm.
of the last 22 years. It's arguable, I think, at least.
Sure.
Like it's yeah, but I personally place it at the number one.
Mm-hmm.
Some people quite correctly say that it might be one of the best films of all time.
Mm.
Where does it rank for you?
Okay. I kind of agree with you here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it in my top 3 of all
Yeah,
time.
of all time. How about of the 21st century?
I'll call it a tie.
Yeah, okay. What does it tie with?
Godfather 2.
Godfather 2 wasn't in the 21st century though.
21st century?
Yeah, the last 22 years lah.
Oh no, sorry.
There's a
I got confused on the
Godfather,
timelines.
Godfather 2 was in the 20th century.
I'll still say that okay, 21st century. Yes, you might be right then.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few here and there, like your Portrait of a Lady on Fires and Parasites, and some of the other stuff there, Arrivals out there. But
No,
I mean,
but
Paddington
in
2
terms of
certainly has to be.
reach and like
Yeah,
I think Paddington 2 might be it.
Yeah. In terms of reach, the fact that it affects adults, kids, old men, young women, people of all ethnicities, that kind of four quadrant
Well,
reach.
except one
Nothing.
reviewer that hits it.
One reviewer lah. But the thing is, right, like most films will have more than one reviewer who didn't like it.
Exactly.
The fact that there was only one reviewer in the entire world, in the age of the internet, where
Yeah.
everyone, including us, are reviewing films,
Yep.
right? Like the fact that only one person didn't like it just shows its broad appeal.
Yeah.
How widespread the acclaim is. The first thing you might notice if you watch the first Paddington, which is available on Netflix actually right now, is that it is not constantly blaring to get your attention.
No.
I think where many kids' movies turn up the volume and shout at viewers, Paddington is a comparatively gentle
Mm-hmm.
experience. The bear's adventures are whimsical more than they are boisterous. And even when he causes mayhem, it's kind of very small scale mayhem.
Yeah.
And in the second film, a major plot point revolves around him giving someone a bad haircut. Not exactly a high stakes
Nope.
situation, but it ends up being amusing and funny and heartwarming and everything that Paddington is.
Mm-hmm.
The movie that Paddington reminds me most of in terms of its gentle, bucolic storybook feel is the 1995 film Babe, which proved to
Mm.
be a surprising Oscar favorite. And much like that movie, Paddington is a sneaky, subtle call for tolerance and good manners. And like that movie sequel, Big Pig in the City, Paddington 2 is a slightly more serious look at what happens when you put the titular character's pleas for politeness into a darker kind of post Brexit, post Trump, post Boris Johnson kind of
Yeah.
context. In the sequel, Paddington is framed for the theft of a very expensive, one of a kind pop up
Yep.
book, which he has been saving up for, intending to send to his Aunt Lucy back home in Peru.
Yeah.
The villain is a washed up actor, Phoenix Buchanan, played by Hugh Grant
Oh,
in I'm gonna say the performance of his lifetime.
best.
It is played with such hammy precision
Mm-hmm.
that I laughed at every single thing he did. But because nobody suspects the handsome, upstanding Phoenix, and too many people suspect a bear. He is an immigrant. He is different. Paddington is sent to jail, where he meets the ferocious Knuckles McGinty, played by Brendan Gleeson, and he sees his every belief put to the test. And meanwhile, the Browns, his family, do their damnedest to win Paddington's release. I don't believe it's a spoiler to say that things turn out well in the end.
Sure.
Good triumphs over evil, and Paddington is reunited with his adopted family.
Mm-hmm.
But the road there is filled with stressful moments, the darkest hour before the dawn, and trying times where Paddington wonders if doing the right thing is really worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do the themes of Paddington 2 elevate Paddington 2 over Paddington 1, the darker nature of it, the idea that Paddington has to grapple with the idea that am I doing the right thing? Is politeness really the way to go? Can I win over these people? That kind of thing,
Yep. Yep.
like what do you think about that in terms of Paddington 2?
Okay, like the stakes were a lot higher,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep,
And there was again how I mean you put it in a I mean even though it's a funny nonsensical satire of a prison, it's still a
yep,
prison.
yep.
And these are hardcore criminals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to see it was like a reflection, it's like putting a mirror onto yourself, lah.
Mm,
Like how can you judge these people, without getting to know them and all that? And that was something that Paddington kind of went by, lah. Even though it was his darkest time and his most
yeah.
like lowest point when he was even questioning whether the Browns were going to come and get him,
Mm-hmm.
or whether he was forgotten.
Yep.
And like the prisoners, like, they shouldn't be forgotten, like, and there was given character, and there was given a lot of this beautifully woven tapestry of a place, lah.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
By the
yeah.
end of it, I feel that again the good in people
Mm.
triumphs over whatever bad habits they might have.
The cynicism with people, they can't be rehabilitated, they
Yeah,
can't be changed. I mean, the idea of like, have you ever tried being nice to these people or being kind to them?
yeah,
Perhaps they might react differently if you don't see them with suspicion. That's the idea of Paddington as in general, alongside Paddington 2.
exactly.
I think besides all of those like very very heartwarming themes, is also, I think the second film also scales up the level of production
Oh yeah, definitely.
by quite a lot.
Yeah.
There is a climactic train chase that would
Oh
have blown the first movie's budget. And at times the comedic action beats in those movies recall some of the best comedy of the silent era, your Charlie
yeah.
Chaplin's or your Buster Keaton's,
Hmm.
in their commitment to stuffing as many visual gags into an action sequence as possible. Paddington 2 even references a lot of Chaplin's films. And Simon King, who once again, sorry, Paul King, who once again directs and co-writes the screenplay for the second film, has a knack for turning his London setting into its best storybook self. It looks like a
Agreed.
storybook. There are panoramic wide shots that capture the day-to-day activities of Windsor
Hmm.
Gardens, everybody in the sleepy little neighborhood going about their work. When Paddington is sent to prison, the neighborhood starts to fall apart without the little bear around
Exactly.
to be kind to everyone. And the scenes are peppered with little vignettes or performances by a calypso band that comments on the action.
Hmm.
The prison, albeit it's a gloomier setting, but it's also an excellent stage for production numbers. The Brown's home also has an elaborate pop-up diorama feel to it, filled with fun little details to pour over the edges of the frame. In particular, the Paddington films, and two especially, are terrific at using these little bits with the Browns to set up story points
Hmm.
that seem unnecessary at first, until say Mary training to swim the English Channel comes in handy at precisely the right moments
Exactly.
in the third act. And even the obvious computer animation of Paddington has a hyper real quality to it that blends perfectly with the storybook
Yeah.
frames. It looks a bit less jarring than say Who Framed Roger Rabbit and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, King and the cast turn the world of Paddington 2 into a soothing, enjoyable night at the movies if you haven't seen it.
Hmm.
But there's another more subtle reason, in my opinion, that Paddington 2 resonated at that particular moment in history, and even still today. I think perhaps my favorite bit of Paddington 2 is that it's a gentle defense of the need and value of immigrant communities. Paddington himself being an immigrant community,
Yep.
and the multi-ethnic, multicultural neighborhood that he lives in is also that. Paddington 2 has this kind of media riff of 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 the persecution or suspicion of immigrant communities. And the story of Paddington is inherently an immigrant community. And even in the first film, King and his collaborators celebrated to increase the multiculturalism of London in the 21st
Yeah.
century. There is, a calypso band after all, and Paddington 2 takes these ideas to a new height.
Yeah.
Um, I don't mistake this movie for preaching to anybody. Even in a scene in which the Browns confront their vigilant neighbor, Mr. Curry, right,
Hmm.
Peter Capaldi, over his inability to accept that Paddington is a good little bear simply because Mr. Curry has prejudged Paddington due to how he looks.
Yeah.
Paddington 2 is a wonderfully made movie in of itself, and it understands that its message is best grasped when you're couching a positive message,
Hmm.
not by beating you over the head, not by having like 5 minute soliloquies in a courtroom like Aaron Sorkin
Yeah.
does, but it couches it in an entertaining clockwork contraption of the story. The message is there.
Yeah.
Paddington's neighbors are diverse. They are multicultural. But the police clearly think Paddington committed a crime rather than Phoenix because one seems more like a criminal than them. That metaphor is there, the allegory is there, but you're not beaten over the head with it. And I think that's why it doesn't receive the backlash of more quote unquote woke films, right? Don't you think?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's a great point. Um,
Mm.
it doesn't feel preachy at all, right? Every moment is
Mm-hmm.
earned. Um, every great like everything that's done earlier in the film pays off by the end.
Yep.
And that's something that adds to the whole like why it's the greatest film. Like everything that was done was for a reason. There
Mm.
was no loose threads by the end. Everything was tied up really nicely. It was a
Mm.
neat ending, which which just made you cry lah. It's one of those few
Mm-hmm.
films where nearly everything was perfect. If
Mm.
not, it was perfect lah.
Oh, I think it's as close to a perfect
So I
film as you
really
can
cannot
get, lah.
I can't even nitpick it like really.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. 100% agree. Did you, like, when you were watching it initially? Did you notice its themes about very subtle themes, albeit like
Mm.
it's themes of immigrant communities in metropolitan Western cities.
The
Did you
immigrant
did you?
population one took
Yeah,
a while.
right, right,
Like
right. I
in
mean, like
retrospect, I was like, oh yeah,
I mean, even the idea that Paddington himself
he's an immigrant.
is an immigrant. He's brown. He looks different, and he is, despite how kind or how perfect of an immigrant that he is, right? He is still accused of a crime that he didn't commit, right?
Yep. And
Yeah.
at the end of it, nobody could really do anything about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
the neighbors and all that, like were powerless when he was taken away.
Yep.
Even though they were, trying to convince the authorities that there can be no way there is a bear.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, yeah. I like hiding all this stuff in metaphor is kind of a time-honored tradition
It's,
in children's movies,
yeah,
right? And because kids will already see themselves in Paddington, it's easier to make the leap of understanding. At the very least, talking anti-bear prejudice.
yeah.
Similarly, Paddington's insistent on, he's so insistent on seeing the best in everyone,
Hmm.
even the fearsome Knuckles and his fellow prisoners. It will hopefully spark similar inclinations in kids, right? And I hesitate to talk about that too much
Sure.
because I don't want like Paddington 2 to become an object of a culture war or whatever. It has no interest
Yeah,
in
it
taking
shouldn't
part in
be.
that. Yeah, yeah. King and his collaborators were just making the movie in the midst of Brexit, with many in the UK kind of made uncomfortable by the increased levels of immigration to their country and unsure of what it means for their nation's future. And Paddington 2 insists at every turn that kindness, empathy, and perhaps a little bit of marmalade are the solutions to the vast majority of life's problems. Um, Early on in Paddington
Mm.
2, Paddington says, if we're kind and polite, the world will be right.
Hmm.
It says a lot more about reality than it does the movie that this might, like this isn't a radical political statement. It
No.
is quite
Benign.
general and it's quite benign and
Yeah.
true. And hopefully more people, especially children, which is this movie is targeted to, takes that to heart. I suppose we needed more movies like this in an era where so many of our children's entertainment, right, aspire to be more adult, aspire to be a bit more real or grim, stuff like that. I do think there is a value in kind of the wholesomeness and old schoolness of what Paddington 2 and Paddington in general brings
Okay.
to a kid's audience, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess before we wrap up our discussion on Paddington,
Sure.
like, I mean, give me your like final thoughts lah on Paddington 2 if you haven't mentioned anything yet, or Paddington in general as a franchise.
I mean, honestly, the books are sadly not as popular as the movies.
Yeah.
It should definitely get more of a highlight as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think because the ideas from the movie, I mean, are also in the books, lah. You know,
Yes,
I feel
absolutely.
that it should be one of those things that kids all around the world should read.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea of politeness and kindness, to resonate, yeah,
Empathy, right? Yeah.
empathy, to
Yeah.
and all these complex adult emotions, but placed
Mm.
in not simplified, but rather in a way that kids can understand, right? Is so
Right.
important.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that's something that I'm glad that the two movies does really well,
Mm-hmm.
and the accessibility of the movies would definitely help with, like, the future generations lah, hopefully being nicer lah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Why do you think Paddington isn't as big amongst kids? At least from where when I was growing up, like Paddington sort of wasn't as big as say Winnie the Pooh or stuff like that. Like, why is that? You think?
I think it's also because of how English it is.
Oh, right, right. It's very uniquely
Yeah,
English, right? It's very specific,
yeah,
right?
so
Yeah.
for us it's not so bad because we're ex-English colony, and we kind of can understand the quirks of English society lah, you know
Wasn't Winnie the Pooh set in England as
yeah,
well?
but then it was more fantastical because of the 100 Acre Wood, rather than it being
Mm.
set in London.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I suppose also like me being like a fat kid, right? I identified with Winnie the Pooh a bit more.
he likes food. He likes honey.
I know. Like gluttony is his one sin, and I'm like, yeah,
I'm
cool.
down. No, Winnie the
I'm
Pooh
down.
also was another bear that I grew up with, so no complaints here.
Of course, of course. I think Winnie the Pooh it was the bear that most people grew up with, not Paddington.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, like this whole episode was dedicated to point out like why Paddington was special, why Paddington deserves as much attention as the other bears, like your Winnie the
Yeah.
Poohs and etc. I think simply because it's just a bit more humane, it's a bit more empathetic. Its focus is a bit more on kindness and not on gluttony. Yeah, I love the films. I started reading the books, the ebooks,
Mm.
on you can borrow them from National Library, which I did a couple of
Cute,
years
right?
ago. Yeah, they're adorable. It took me like 2 days to get through 60 years of work because they're so easy to read.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
takes you like 5 minutes to read a book. I mean, I loved it all. If you have not seen Paddington One and Paddington Two, what are you doing with your
yeah.
lives, man? It's two of the best films of the 21st
And if
century.
your
Some argue,
parents, please introduce it to your kids.
yeah, yeah. Like take your iPads away from your kids and maybe put the Paddington book down with them.
Yeah,
Unless they're reading the Paddington books on their
that's
iPads,
fine
then
too.
it's fine. Yeah, that's fine too. So yeah, we both love Paddington 2. In my opinion, best film of the 21st century, and the Paddington franchise, one of the most important things that you can introduce to your kids to create a better world for the future.
Agreed.
Yep. So to wrap up this episode of Behold, there is something that me and Isa do, but I haven't done it with you yet. Where at the end of every Behold
Sure.
episode, we usually give some mini recommendations about what's making us happy. The stuff that we've watched this month that we kind of want to recommend to other people. Stuff that would not be on Genre Equality. Stuff that would not be on future episodes of
Oh,
Behold. Is there anything over the past month that you've seen that you maybe wanna spotlight to some of our listeners here?
okay. I mean,
Mm. Well, how about I begin
yeah,
then?
yeah. You go ahead.
It gives you some time to think about it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Firstly, I would like to recommend. This has just been put up on Netflix just last month.
Hmm.
A little late on this, but Bollywood
Oh, yeah,
blockbuster.
that was the one I was gonna say too.
Oh, well, we can talk about it here. Bollywood blockbuster
Ooh,
RRR is now out on Netflix. Let me tell you, even by Bollywood standards,
just Hollywood by now.
RRR. Oh, I'm sorry. It is. Even by that region standards, right, which is known for like very bombastic films, very over the top films. RRR is insane. It is fucking spectacular.
Mhm.
Like SS Rajamouli's maximalist blockbuster features some of the most magnificent action sequences, dazzling musical numbers, and supercharged emotion that you will ever see in cinema, or in this case, if you're watching on Netflix, on streaming. RRR is insane. It's one of the best Indian movies of the last few years.
Mhm.
One of the most over the top dazzling. uh it was just gonna grab you.
It does.
It's 3.5 hours long. It feels like 30 minutes. But it's nothing about it I didn't like. It's
Yes.
probably gonna end up in my top 10 films of the year.
Yeah.
Have you seen Triple R?
Yes. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. Like I've never sat through a Telugu. I mean, this was Hindi dubbed,
Hindi
right?
dub, but originally in Telugu,
Yeah, it's
correct?
originally Telugu, and oh my god, it was near perfect. Like
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it was 3 hours plus, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the twists and the turns and the character development was so beautifully done. That
Mm.
relationship between the two main characters, oh my god, that's like the kind of brotherhood that you can never get anywhere else.
Yeah.
Um, and they're based on two real characters.
Who've never met in real
Yeah,
life, but this is sort of
uh,
a fantasy of
fantasy.
what if they did meet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Two revolutionaries lah, and I love that they just took liberties with the history and all that stuff lah. Ray
Mm-hmm,
Stevenson
mm-hmm.
is an asshole.
Right, right, right. But he sort of has made a career on playing assholes, both in Hollywood and in Bollywood, actually.
Yeah. Whatever it is, I think Triple R is one of the like top five films of the year.
Yes, yes. Somebody actually interviewed, I think Vulture or something,
Mm,
interviewed Ray Stevenson in about how he has carved up a niche for himself
mm.
in the Indian film industry by playing like colonial villains.
Mhm.
And he's just like, keep giving me the paychecks, man. I'm so good at doing this."
I mean, it's not like he's misrepresenting the colonials.
The British Empire in that era,
They were quite
uh,
assholing.
bro. I mean, come on. I mean, like, yeah, they are. There is no way. Even some of the aspects of the film, right? You know, the torture and persecution and oppression
That really happened.
of the that really happened. If anything, it might have been underplayed. To be
Exactly.
honest, the scale of the British oppression on many of its colonial,
Especially the Indians.
especially the Indians, were horrific.
Yeah,
Like there is now this film, if anything, right, it under exaggerates
I
what the
agree.
British did to the Indians.
You
Yeah.
must understand, India was basically a second class race, like Indian
Mm.
last time in the colonial times. It's not like
Yes. Yeah.
partnership or equals or things like that. It was literally servant and master.
When have the British ever done partnerships of equals?
Exactly. So that's why when you portray Ray Stevenson as this colonial master being an asshole, totally on
His
point.
wife too. His wife was
Oh,
arguably
evil.
worse.
Yeah, that was the evil
Yeah,
woman right there.
I know. But you also have like the token kind-hearted white
Oh,
girl,
yeah,
who's
they,
the love interest.
who fall in love with the main character so quickly.
I love that in like Tollywood or Bollywood films, right? That there is the white token nice, the token white guy nice person, you know.
Yeah,
Like it's the reverse discrimination that I've always been looking for in America, where you know there's always the token black guy, but this is the token white girl
token
who's
white
nice.
girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, go check out RR,
Yeah,
man.
man,
It's up.
definitely.
It's up on Netflix. I definitely recommend that you check it out if you haven't seen it.
Hmm.
Another recommendation that I wanna make
Sure.
is a show called The Bear
Mm.
on Hulu. The Bear is Safdie Brothers level stressful.
Mm.
Um, it is it is stressful and it's absolutely amazing. This is a new dramedy that follows a fine dining chef named Carmen, who returns to his hometown Chicago neighborhood to take over his family's beef sandwich shop after his brother commits suicide.
Mm.
This is an unfiltered, unfettered dive into the absolute chaos, toxicity, and abuse that happens on a daily basis inside the kitchen of a restaurant. It is unexpectedly thrilling, and it somehow become the streaming hit of the summer.
Mm.
It's a bit like the new Oni Murders in the Building. They're very different shows, but you know, shows that were unexpected hits of the summer. You know, over your Marvels and stuff like
Roger
that.
that.
Yeah, go check out The Bear. It's available on Hulu. It will be available soon next month on Disney Plus as well. My last recommendation, probably the best
Sure.
recommendation, is Nathan Fielder's new show. You see Nathan For You,
Yep.
right?
Review. You are the one that always recommended to me.
Boy, Nathan Fielder's new show. I'm not talking about How to John Wilson, which he produces, but
Hmm.
his new show, which he stars in, called The Rehearsal, makes Nathan For You seem very tame.
What?
Yeah. The Rehearsal is, how do I describe the rehearsal? Okay, the rehearsal is based on this premise that, like, there are many real people in the world that are facing, difficult life decisions, difficult conversations,
Hmm.
stuff like that. So Nathan Fielder posts a Craigslist ad offering to help these people with difficult conversations. Like, for example, in episode one, right, there's this guy who is addicted to bar trivia. He goes to pub quizzes with his pub team, right?
Hmm.
And the whole pub team is based on the idea that everyone is an expert in particular fields. So everyone has a
Sure.
master's degree in something. This guy lied to his team, saying, like, 20 years ago, he lied to his team saying that he has a master's degree, but he doesn't.
Okay.
So he wants to confess that he doesn't have a master's degree to them.
Oh my god.
So
Uncomfortable
if this
conversations.
Yeah, uncomfortable conversation. So this is what Nathan Fielder will do. Nathan Fielder approaches you, and then he gets like actors to stalk his friends, his family, everyone around him,
Hmm.
and he gets them to mimic the psychology and speech patterns of all his friends and family and everything. Then he builds a set of all of the subjects' favorite hangouts, like the bar, his house, in a warehouse, and then he uses that as a practice venue for this guy to rehearse these difficult
Oh
conversations,
no.
like several times, 20, 30, 40 times, trying to explore every possible permutation of the uncomfortable conversation, um, that is real. So this is Cinedaki, New York. This is Charlie Kaufman, but in real life.
Whoa. Nathan Fielder
Yeah,
really is a genius, man.
he is a fucking genius, man. there is another episode, right? This
How
week's
many? Oh,
episode
okay.
where
How many episodes so far?
one
Oh,
episode so
okay.
far. Right. There is another episode this week following a woman named Angela. She's a 44-year-old woman living in Oregon, right? And she participates in the show's most elaborate and ludicrous rehearsal. So she wants to know, she's 44 and she doesn't have children. So she wants to know whether she should have children.
At 44. Okay.
At 44, she should. So Nathan Fielder concocts a plan that will allow Angela to simulate raising a son from birth to his 18th birthday over the course of 2 months
No.
by using child actors.
No.
And this is all set in a fake world built in a warehouse. They built fake supermarkets populated by real people, populated by actors playing real people, playing her family, playing her friends. So over the next 2 months, like she will live in this warehouse and see how it is to raise children,
That
to raise a child.
is insane.
Yeah. Each week, this kid who is named Adam, by the way, ages 3 years. So every week is 3 years. Adding to the chaos, right, is Oregon's labor laws, which state that people under the age of 18 are only allowed to work for 4 hours.
Oh no.
So every 4 hours, Nathan Fielder has to figure out a way to swap the child actors without the mother knowing.
How?
I know. Wait till you watch.
Oh my god, I can't wait.
Uh, yeah, and they tried to do it without disrupting the flow of a so-called normal day. It leads to hilarious moments like a staffer rushing up to substitute one Adam in a car seat while Angela is busy putting groceries in the car, stuff like that. And the plight of Angela and her motherhood rehearsal takes up the bulk of the rehearsal's first season. It's a bit of an ongoing storyline. But every episode focuses on the different rehearsal lah. So Fielder has to spin off dealing with Angela, dealing with other clients, and he's even hosting an acting class for potential actors to join the rehearsal studio, like the rehearsal warehouse.
That is
And
a lot of work.
I know. So like there are even like people who play a bartender, people who play a waiter, just bystanders walking down the street, right? Like he gets them to delve so deep into their character, so unnecessarily deep, right? They don't need to know, but but he makes them really think about it. Right?
It's like method acting, but why?
But why? Yeah, just to make a more real environment for his
I
subjects, right?
guess. This
Yeah.
reminds me of that cigarette episode.
Secret?
No, remember in Nathan For You, there was this.
Oh, no smoking. The bar, no smoking bar, right?
Yeah,
Where they do a fake theater
production.
production in a bar to allow people to smoke,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because actors are allowed to smoke on stage, but bar patrons are not. So what if you made a bar into
Everybody
a theater?
actors.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that, but just like on a much bigger
Yeah.
scale.
Oh my god. And that was
Because
already crazy.
keep in mind that Nathan For You had a very low budget.
Mm-hmm.
Think of Nathan Fielder with a HBO
Oh
budget, with unlimited
no,
resources. Like, what can his creativity do in this type of
that's
situation?
genius.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go watch it.
Like in the first episode, right? The guy, the bar guy, who wants to confess
Yeah,
that he doesn't have a master's degree. So during all the rehearsal confessions, right, he becomes distracted by fake bar trivia. He wants to gather them together at a bar trivia night and confess to them. Then. But
wow.
then as they start playing the bar trivia game, he gets obsessed with the bar trivia because he's a bar trivia aficionado.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he often bails on the confession to focus on the trivia for the night. So Nathan Fielder can't find a way to fix this. So because he's so worried about losing bar trivia because he'll be distracted by the confession, Nathan Fielder tries to incept the answers to the bar trivia night to him
Oh wow.
without him knowing. So he stalks the actual bar trivia guy, the guy who does the questions.
Uh-huh.
He gets the questions and answers from him, and then through the course of daily conversations with this guy, tries to incept all the questions and all the answers into him.
My god.
Like for example, they're just walking down the street, and then he hires an actor to play a cop, and then the cop says like, oh, this is a crime scene, you can't cross here, you got to go the other side, and then the guy asks, what happened? Why is there a crime scene? Oh, this guy got shot in the head, man. It's days like this when I wish the Chinese didn't invent gunpowder. So like. So it's all in the hopes that he will get the answer, which is the Chinese invented gunpowder for the next bar
Oh
trivia.
no.
Yeah, it's amazing. This show is wild, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So those were my recommendations for this month. Do you have anything that you've been able to think of for the past month that you like to recommend?
Honestly, it's like old stuff that I've been rewatching.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you can bring up a couple of old things too.
Weirdly, because I got COVID, by the way, over the weekend. I had a bit of
Mm-hmm.
free time. I
Yep.
started watching Naruto.
Wow, that's a long journey you have ahead of you, bro.
I know
Yeah.
it was something that I didn't know why I started, but now I can't stop.
Mm-hmm. Did you watch Naruto before? Are you rewatching it?
No, 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 this is my first time. I never grew up a fan of Naruto.
Amazing. Okay, okay.
Yeah, but just because I wanted to understand Israel Adesanya's
Cosplay.
yeah, like why he's so into it. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of understand it now. Because I got to the episode where they just introduced Rock Lee,
Right, 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 right.
which is the later
Um,
half
I,
of like season one.
Adesanya cosplays a lot of anime, lah,
Yeah, he does.
to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big anime
But I
fan.
mean Rock Lee is his
Uh,
favorite.
yeah,
Yeah.
he does it a lot, right?
Yeah.
And that's even his post fight celebration, right? It's usually the hand signals for Rock Lee.
Yeah. Because Rock Lee is
Yeah.
like he doesn't have any powers.
Mm-hmm.
He's just physically at the peak. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Anything else that you've been watching besides Naruto?
Oh, the new season of What We Do in the Shadows. Kind of
Amazing.
fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
second episode
It's
just
not
came out,
available.
right?
Yeah, the first two episodes actually
First two,
came out.
sorry.
Yeah. Episode 3 will be out this week. I loved how they just instantly undercut all the character
Yep.
development from the last episode of last
Yep.
season. Like within 15 minutes, like, oh, they're all
They're
back.
all being assholes again.
Yeah. I think the only thing that they carried over from last season is baby Colin Robinson, the
Yes,
the
the
boy
boy.
as they're calling him, who is genuinely the most horrific thing
It
I think I've seen in my
is.
life.
Oh,
Yeah. Like it's horrific, but also kind of like
it
endearing
is because he's a
sometimes.
baby.
Yeah, but with Colin Robinson's
I
face.
know.
But yeah, we'll talk about what we do in shadows once it
Yeah,
finishes
on
on
genre.
genre equality. Yeah, I get that. I guess that wraps up this
It
episode
does.
in our recommendations. Thanks so much for tuning in,
Yeah,
guys.
it's fun.
Remember to watch Paddington, Triple R, The Bear, especially Nathan Field's latest show, The Real Soul, is great. I'm sure a lot of you watch What We Do in the Shadows and Naruto, which
Yeah,
are
yeah.
very popular shows.
Mhm.
But yeah, till next time, we'll be back. End of the month actually for our new episode of Genre Equality, and next month we'll talk about The Americans, one of my favorite shows on the
I'm on that,
FX.
right?
Sure, yeah, yeah. You requested to be on that,
Yes,
right? So I put
yes.
you on that, lah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. But yeah. Isa I think has like one more month to finish the last two
Oh,
seasons, which
okay.
I think
Oh,
is
the
doable.
best seasons.
Yeah, which I think are doable.
Yeah.
Totally. Till next time though, guys. This has been Hit Zero.
I'm Hardy.
Goodbye, guys.
Bye.